Hey everybody, welcome to episode 91 of the Is That Normal podcast, and today we're going to judge a book by its cover.
Oh yes, so Randall and I have joked around for quite some time about several other podcasts we want to start, but one of them,
Someone can share.
The one that we keep coming back to is judging a book by its cover.
Yes.
And yes.
So our concept of this is you and I are both fascinated by, like, not, when we say the cover of a book, we might mean like legitimately like what its material it's made out of, like the texture, all of the things that actually make up. So we decided we wanted to start a podcast where we review a book not based on anything inside it, strictly by the quality of its cover.
Yes, absolutely. My wife actually would say, like, part of this is because I've got this problem that whenever I go into a store, I have to touch everything, like, and feel it, maybe rub it against my face, and So I've got, like, I don't know if that's a problem, but I've got like this tactile need to like feel like textures, and
so this book, for example, this is Family Discipleship, which you actually referenced in the last podcast, and we've talked about before. We even talked about the quality of the cover before.
Yes, it's like squishy.
It's squishy and it has texture to it, and so this is one I would give this,
like, it's got this wood grain has a different texture there.
Yeah. I would give this a very positive review, judging only by the cover.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to review a different book called Missional Motherhood, and looking at it, it's a perfect candidate for our sub podcast or whatever you want to call it, what we're talking about doing. So Randall, tell me what you're seeing. Some people are only listening. Some people can see this. So tell us what you're seeing.
So this book, the cover, it's a paperback, but it's like that really like good quality textured cardstock with like gold embossed on it and raised, like texture to all of the design on it.
Like this outline, this is embossed, like, so it's like depressed, but then these letters here are what's the other word? I don't know what the right word is, but it sticks out. Yeah, it's like Braille.
Yes,
except it's not Braille.
That's
just
right.
Letters.
My first thought, what I would compare this to is like when you go into the greeting card aisle, and you've got like the 99-cent greeting cards, and then you go all the way down to the Hallmark like $7.99. Like $15.99, like high quality, like this must be for somebody like super special type cards. That's what that cover makes me think of.
I have to confess, I'm kind of got another problem that my wife says I have, which is if I'm going in to get something specific, like I've decided, or someone sent me like, go buy this thing, I forget to look at the price. I'm just like, I'm on a mission. I'm buying this thing. We're getting
That's dangerous with
and
cards.
I get it. And yeah, so one day I was in there, I was buying cards, and I was like, so she's like, pick out a nice card. So I'm like, oh, I like this card. And I went and checked out, and it was like, it was like $10. I was like, $10 for a card? What?
Unbelievable.
Anyway,
sorry. So that's what this book reminds me of, is so you picture the like high-end best Hallmark greeting cards.
It's definitely got a nice feel to it. It while it's a paperback, it's like it's just unlike any other book cover that I felt. It's just got a nice texture. It's got a little bit of a just overall texture everywhere, and then I like the kind of classic look of all the clip art that they have on there. It's like an old old
Victorian
cameo, and it makes me think about classic things. So I like it. It's good. I give the cover a thumbs up.
This is that was like our first preview episode of our new podcast.
Right. Who knows? Who knows where this might go? Yeah, tell us if you love it. We'll do some more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're excited about that. But we really are actually going to talk about what's also inside of this book today.
So today's main point is we're going to talk about the content inside this book, although we definitely like the cover, because this book is all about how to help mothers capture the design that God has for them.
Well, welcome back. We are glad you are joining us. And if you're a mom, we're really glad you're joining us because it's almost Mother's Day. And the book we're reviewing today is about being a mom. So Mark, you're not a mom.
I'm not a mom.
So how did you come across this book?
Yes. So I was reading another book. And as I was reading it, it was about hospitality and house ministry and some things like that. And this lady that's writing it, she gets to this point where she says, and every new mom in our neighborhood, when I find out that someone's had a baby, I buy them a copy of my favorite book about motherhood and give it to them. And this is that book. And so, like I shared in our last episode, so immediately I'm reading this book and she says, this is my favorite motherhood book. I give it away all the time. I'm like, I should buy that. So I pulled out my phone, got my Amazon app out, and bought a copy. And
we talked about that in the last episode.
Yeah, we did. So it did check the price before I bought it. Anyway, it was worth it. So just for the cover. But so I got it and read it, and it's just really interesting. So the author, her name is Gloria Furman, and she's from the United States, and she went to school in Texas, and her husband did too. But now her husband is a pastor. She's a pastor's wife at an international church in Dubai. And she said... Which
is not in Texas.
Which is not in Texas. It's in the Middle East. And so actually they said there's I think 70 different countries or nationalities represented at their church. And anyway, and it really, that doesn't color too much of the book, really, but just kind of interesting, whose voice you're getting that message from.
Yeah. So what's the book about at its core?
When I got it, in that title, it's, again, it's really classic and clean. Mm-hmm. And that title, Missional Motherhood, I expected a whole bunch of bullet points and numbered lists and do this and do that, a very pragmatic nuts and bolts kind of book. And actually the author said very early on in the book, the last thing you need is another book that tells you someone's opinion of how to best parent. What you really need is to understand clearly how God designed you and what he designed you to do. And so this really comes at it from what I would call a very kind of biblical and theological stance of hey, let's do an overview, let's read the Bible together and figure out what God's called us to do. So quite a bit different than what I expected, and what it begins laying out is this case for God's biblical design for women and how that design can empower them to be nurturers.
Yeah. So what is that design?
She defines it as this: Jesus invites women to missional motherhood, to follow his pattern, to trust his promises, and to nurture others by the power he provides. And it's interesting because, and she even says that in here. When we say motherhood, really that nurturing, that's not necessarily just about your biological children. So she really broadens that scope to be this is the design, how God designed and wired women. These are her words. To be nurturers, and that's one of the pieces of what his plan is for them. And so, and that's really the first chapter kind of unpacks that. And then the rest of the book is split between the Old Testament, which is chapters 2 through 6, and the New Testament, which is chapters 7 through 12, and kind of gives this overview of where that comes from. So, so the Old Testament chapters, it starts out with creation and it talks about some of the ways that God designed, talks about the fall and some of the consequences of the fall, but then it goes through this big, long, thread, tying all that together so that all these stories in the Old Testament we read ties us all back to that, how God designed man and woman and what their roles are supposed to be. And it really ultimately gets us to this place of understanding that that's an echo of how God continues to restore his children, whether they be in exile or in the kingdom, and everywhere in between. That part of what God implanted in women and motherhood is that part of him that nurtures and restores. And so really kind of interesting. And then the New Testament part, she then kind of reveals how the Great Commission, which is Jesus' command to all of us to go make disciples, specifically integrates into that nurturing others and motherhood kind of role.
So what are some of the takeaways from that as you've read through that, and there's a lot of concepts there that you just talked about?
Yeah, the culminating point is how Jesus empowers women to do what they're designed to do. And so, some of those last chapters I made a bullet point, even though she didn't, that kind of talks about how, Jesus created mothers, that whole concept of motherhood comes from God. God designed it. He made it biologically and emotionally and relationally. He designed that. He planned that. He implanted that within us as people. And Jesus redeemed motherhood. When Jesus restored relationships between him and us, that also redeemed this ability for us to have healthy relationships with each other. And so he redeemed that at that point. Christ also speaks truth for every mother. So when we're trying to figure out how to be the kind of mothers that we're supposed to be, she talks about how Christ answers that like that. He gives the foundation for the answers to that, and he also provides what they need and leads them where they need to go if they'll let him kind of be the foundation of what they do. And then the kind of the last part, and this is really cool, and it talks about the resurrection, which is a big deal, kind of the central part of our relationship with God, that he gives life, and therefore he is the source of everything motherhood is trying to nurture. And so because God is the giver of life, and he is the renewer of life, and he is the promiser of eternal life, then whatever we're trying to nurture and develop has to come from what he has given. So anyway, it's really interesting. Lots of examples, details, but basically, just how, as with every disciple, every mother must find their mission and strength and purpose from Christ's involvement in their life. And so she really points us back to that personal relationship with Jesus, which is where everything should point us.
Yeah. So as we dig into that a little bit more, do you have any concerns or maybe just cautions about the book?
A few. Like I said, if you're buying this because you want a how-to book, this is not going to work for you. And because there's a lot of theology and philosophical talk about some of those things in there, it can get a little heady or a little academic at places. But I would challenge you to push through that, especially you might have the biggest struggle in that Old Testament part pushing through, because there's a lot of information, a lot of philosophy, but push through to that New Testament part, because that's when she really starts putting the application to all of that. And then some of her examples and experiences maybe aren't exactly universal, because there's some uniqueness about her story. But then some of her examples are just spot on. I think would apply to everybody. And just overall, she's very honest and transparent about life and her struggles, and so I think there's a lot of there's going to be a lot of collaboration people are going to feel as they read the book.
So, as you've reviewed it, overall, you would recommend it, and if so, why?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great and kind of fresh perspective on this topic. It kind of takes a different angle coming at it than most books I've read or have had shared with me. It's a wonderful biblical overview. I mean, it really gives you this kind of like I said, Genesis to Revelation overview of some concepts. And so I always think that's really healthy for us to get a bigger, like 10,000 foot view of how the Bible talks about things. And it's an encouragement to be very spiritually intentional in our homes and our lives, which, like we talked about again in our last episode, like how that is like a basic foundational need for our families. So plus it's got this great cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just got to feel it.
Just based on the cover, we will recommend it alone.
That's right. So that's 2 thumbs up. Thumbs up for the cover. Thumbs up for the content.
Awesome. So as we wrap up today, our two takeaways are: put this book in your to read list, and maybe consider getting a copy for a mom that you know. And as we talked about in our last episode, studying, potentially reading through books together with someone. Yeah. So this would be a great one, maybe to grab a couple of other moms and read through that together.
Yep, absolutely.
And then the second thing is to share with us one of your favorite book covers.
And who knows, we might use it in a future.
That's right.
Judge a Book by Cover podcast.
Episode 2.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
All right.
Be abnormal.